Flint and Hustler magazine announce a cash offer of up to $1 million. Have you had an adulterous sexual encounter with a current member of the United States Congress or a high-ranking government official? Can you provide documentary evidence of illicit sexual relations with a congressman, senator, or other prominent office holder? Larry Flint and Hustler magazine will pay you up to $1 million if we choose to publish your verified story and use your material. This is a full-page ad that ran in the Washington Post on Sunday, October 4th, 1998. During the supercharged Bill Clinton impeachment saga, $1 million if you can provide evidence that you had an affair with a high-ranking government official. $1 million from Larry Flint and Hustler magazine. Not long after that full-page ad was published in that Sunday edition of the Washington Post, success. Larry Flint and Hustler magazine's quest uncovered the hypocrisy they were looking for.
Tonight, the search underway for the next Speaker of the House. The last man in line for that job has resigned.
I must set the example that I hope President Clinton will follow. I will not stand for Speaker of the House on January 6th.
Republican Congressman Bob Livingston in line then to become the next Speaker of the House, but forced to resign after Larry Flint and Hustler magazine got the goods on him. They were about to reveal that Bob Livingston, the guy busy impeaching Bill Clinton, Bob Livingston had himself been unfaithful to his own wife. Not news in itself necessarily, but definitely news in context because of the crusade that Mr. Livingston was on as a congressman and a political leader at the time. It was blatant, humiliating hypocrisy. The reveal of that and the shocking resignation of Bob Livingston when everybody thought he was about to be Speaker of the House, that happened on the same day that the House of Representatives voted to impeach Bill Clinton. At the time, it was just as shocking, which of course was the point. After he resigned, Bob Livingston was replaced in Congress by a young family values politician who had this to say about the whole sordid Bob Livingston affair. Quote, "I think Livingston stepping down makes a very powerful argument that Clinton should resign as well and move beyond this mess." That young family values politician went on to have a really bright career in Congress. He campaigned on stuff like protecting the sanctity of marriage. He co-authored the federal marriage amendment to keep gay people from getting married because that kind of marriage is of a lower moral class than the kind of marriage that he had. That young family values politician is a man you may have heard of. His name is David Vitter. David Vitter inherited Bob Livingston's seat in the House of Representatives after Bob Livingston had to resign in disgrace over his Bob Livingston sex scandal. David Vitter then went on to become a U.S. Senator, and frankly, he didn't really make much of a national impression until about 8 years later, when Larry Flint and Hustler magazine struck again. In 2007, after it was revealed that a D.C. madam had been running a high-end prostitution ring in Washington, Larry Flint and Hustler magazine took out this full-page ad in the Washington Post. Look familiar? Larry Flint and Hustler magazine announced a cash offer of up to $1 million. Have you had a sexual encounter with a current member of the United States Congress or a high-ranking government official? 9 years after they did it the first time, during the Clinton impeachment proceedings, Larry Flint and Hustler magazine were again on the lookout and willing to pay for it, willing to pay for evidence of political hypocrisy. 9 years after getting Bob Livingston, Larry Flint got Bob Livingston's replacement. He got David Vitter. They discovered Senator Vitter's phone number listed over and over and over again in the D.C. madam's phone records. They approached Mr. Vitter's office with the prostitution allegations. Before they could even get a call back, David Vitter went public. He admitted that even though he had called for Bill Clinton's resignation over a sex scandal, even though he took the seat of a guy who resigned over a sex scandal, even though he had campaigned and governed as a no sex for you, I'm the better moral sexual being than you guy, David Vitter was guilty of the same serious sin. But David Vitter was not going to step down. That is sort of the forgotten element of the whole how David Vitter got exposed story. It was Larry Flint. It was Larry Flint and Hustler magazine who smoked him out. And they did so because of this giant hypocrisy problem that David Vitter had. Just like with the Clinton impeachment hearings, Larry Flint was essentially trying to change the politics around this. He was trying to humiliate politicians who build up their own political credibility by denigrating other people's family lives and other people's sex lives, while they themselves are as interesting / creepy / interesting / creepy as anybody else when it comes to affairs and hookers and naked pictures and sex in bathrooms, what have you. But the richness and diversity of how politicians fail to keep their moralizing pants on is nothing compared to the richness and diversity of political hypocrisy on this subject. I mean, there's the kind of hypocrisy that is co-authoring the federal marriage amendment because of your deep concern about the sanctity of marriage, while hoping the hookers that you're paying outside your marriage are not going to take payment from somebody else to go public with your particular prostitution upcharge list. That's one kind of hypocrisy, Senator Vitter. It is a whole different variety of hypocrisy to intone piously about the sanctity of Congress, about how anybody doing anything gross, anybody committing adultery or having any sort of sexual indiscretion must resign from Congress immediately. Keep Congress clean. Anybody doing anything bad must be treated as a pariah, unless it's someone in your own party, and then it's none of your business. It's that second kind of hypocrisy that is in full humiliating flower right now in Washington and in the punditocracy. It is called the David Vitter problem, or at least it ought to be. If Anthony Wiener must resign from Congress, why mustn't David Vitter? Seriously, it is not a hypothetical question. What you're looking at right now is footage from tonight. A fundraiser that happened tonight, just a few hours ago in Washington, D.C., a fundraiser for United States Senator David Vitter. These are the guests arriving at a very, very fancy townhouse in Washington, D.C., where David Vitter is being toasted tonight by all sorts of D.C. high rollers. The event is at the home of a very well-connected Washington lobbyist. Suggested contribution for this event, $2,500 per person, or $5,000 if you are a federally registered PAC. David Vitter, the week of the Anthony Wiener scandal, is being toasted as a member in good standing of the Republican Party in the United States Senate. David Vitter is still a member of the Senate, and still no elected Republican has, to our knowledge, ever called on David Vitter to resign. Not when he first admitted to being on the D.C. MADDOW list, not when he decided to run for re-election after the scandal had broken, and certainly not now. And now is finally when it's starting to become awkward for Republicans in particular. Chairman of the Republican Party calling on Anthony Wiener to resign because Anthony Wiener, he says, is a creep. That chairman still cannot bring himself to feel that same way about David Vitter.
The Democrats ought to show a little bit of leadership and get this guy out of town. He is a representative in the greatest country on the face of the earth, and the Democrats should show some leadership and tell the guy to hit the bricks and go home. That's what Nancy Pelosi promised she would do. Obviously, Debbie Wasserman Schultz isn't doing it, and someone needs to.
Is there a difference with Senator David Vitter? I mean, with his whole little prostitution, he's on a prostitution client list. Is that different?
Well, I don't know if it's different. I mean, this is a different time. Right, but I'm not relitigating the David Vitter situation.
Right. You're not why? I'm not relitigating. That was chairman of the Republican Party, Reince Priebus, condemning Anthony Wiener, going both barrels after Democrats for them refusing to force Anthony Wiener out of office, but refusing to say boo about David Vitter because what? Hookers no biggie for the Republican Party now? Actual sex with actual humans for actual money? Family values, marriage amendment co-sponsor senator? No big deal? Water under the bridge? Really? As we mentioned last night, the House Republican Campaign Committee is at this very moment trying to pressure House Democrats into giving back in shame campaign contributions they received from Anthony Wiener, arguing that keeping that money donated from Congressman Wiener, quote, indicates that Wiener's behavior is both ethical and acceptable for a member of Congress. So if you are a Democrat and you received any money from Anthony Wiener, you must give it back or you condone everything he did. That's That's what the Republican Party says. That money is tainted. You want to know who else has been giving out money to his colleagues in Congress for quite some time now? Hey, hi there, it's David Vitter. David Vitter runs something called the Louisiana Reform PAC. Yes, reform. And over the past 3 years, since his scandal has been public knowledge, David Vitter has given out close to $100,000 to his Republican colleagues in the House and the Senate. We called the Republican House Campaign Committee today, which was fun, to see if they think that that money, the David Vitter money, is tainted too, to see if they would encourage Republicans who received money from David Vitter to give that money back to David Vitter. We have not yet heard back from the National Republican Campaign Committee. We also contacted every single one of the Republican members of Congress who we know to have received contributions from David Vitter's PAC to see if they plan to give the money back. So far, not a single one of them has told us that they will. When confronted with this really quite embarrassingly blatant David Vitter double standard problem, the Republican Party does not have an answer for it. The chairman of the Republican Party, asked about it by Greta Van Susteren, as you saw on Fox News, can only say, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to relitigate that. And that makes sense because there is no answer he can possibly provide here except for, I am a hypocrite. Can we please change the subject? There is no answer to this except for, it's okay when you're a Republican. It's not okay when you're a Democrat. Anthony Wiener, unlike David Vitter, did not actually have physical contact with anyone outside his marriage that we know of. He did not break the law by paying a prostitution service for sex. He does not even have a political hypocrisy problem here because he never campaigned on protecting the sanctity of marriage like David Vitter did. And because of that, if David Vitter is still a member of Congress, if you have not called for David Vitter to resign, if you do not now feel moved to demand that David Vitter resign now in June 2011, how on earth can you demand that Anthony Weiner needs to resign? I have no idea if Anthony Weiner is going to resign or not. Frankly, it's kind of his business, I would guess. But if you were Anthony Weiner, why would you resign? Knowing that David Vitter is partying at this Washington townhouse tonight, collecting checks. If Anthony Weiner resigns, it means this is a country where we are all okay with people getting pressured to resign for doing something like this, specifically because they are a Democrat. Because Republicans who do stuff like this, and significantly worse, not only get to stay in office, but their party gets to keep campaigning on their righteousness as the morals and values party, defending the nation against the degenerates among us. To everyone calling for Anthony Weiner's resignation, everyone, left, right, and center, do you have a David Vitter problem? Ask yourself. Have you ever called for David Vitter to resign? Ever? Are you comfortable demanding Anthony Weiner's resignation while David Vitter still sits there happily in the Senate? Don't be mad at me. Seriously, ask yourself. Joining us now is the man who first diagnosed the David Vitter problem for the nation. Love him or hate him, Larry Flint has exposed this sort of hypocrisy to great effect over